Good morning, everyone. How are you? Nice to see all of you. So, today, my topic is going to be about anxiety in relationships. And I'm going to give you a little heads up. So, I don't go off of a script. I kind of go with the flow and use my outline. And I practiced this twice. And once was 24 minutes and one was 38 minutes. So, somewhere in there were 14 extra minutes. So, let's see where we land today. We might be somewhere in between there. All right. Anyway, so anxiety in relationships. You can also tell I'm one of the older speakers because I actually have paper as opposed to an iPad or something. But so the first question I have for all of you today is, what causes you anxiety in relationships? So there's a lot of different things within a relationship that might cause us anxiety. Some of us have trouble with boundaries, right? We have trouble saying no. And when we say no, we get very anxious. And I know in my life, there are certain areas I'm good at saying no. And there's other areas that I'm bad at saying no. One is work. I'm really bad at saying no at work. I will step up to take a project on even when I already have 12 other projects waiting to get done. I feel like if no one's going to step up, then I need to, which is probably not a good boundary, right? That just adds more and more to my plate. Now, here's a little story of where I've learned to say no, though. So, when I was first a Christian, I became a Christian when I was in my 20s. I wasn't a Christian all my life. And, it seems like all the women in church get asked to help with children's ministry. Do you feel like that? So, I early on said yes. I said, I went to a church and they said, would you like to help with children's ministry? At the time, I didn't have any children of my own either. But I felt like I needed to say yes. I felt like this is an area that I should say yes in. I'm a new Christian. This is what the women in the church do. I should say yes. So I did this. And I was very, very bad at it. I had the toddler group. And they're adorable, they're cute, but trying to teach them to do something is difficult at 3, years old. And I remember this specific time when it was Easter time and we were building lambs. And this she was probably about 3 years old. And we're building these lamps. And all it was you were taking cotton balls, dipping them in glue, and putting them on the piece of paper to build this fuzzy lamb. So this was me with the 3-year-old girl. Okay, so we just dip it in the glue and we put it on the paper. Okay, we dip it in the glue and we put it on the paper. Okay, we dip it in the glue and put it on the paper. Getting nowhere. So finally I was like, all right, fine. I'm just going to do it. So learning this about myself, many years later, we were in another church, a different church. We walk in one Sunday and the children's minister comes up to me and says, hey, would you like to help out with the children's ministry? And I went, no. Just like that. And she looked at me like, wow, that was quick. And I was like, not my area. It's just really not my area. So there's certain areas I very, very much learned about myself that this is not an area you want me in even. So, we have to learn our boundaries. Like I said, I'm probably still learning my boundaries at work. But in certain areas of my life, I've learned to say no. So if you're one of those people that feels anxiety about saying no, this could be an area that you examine in yourself. What can you say no to? What do you really not like doing? Why do we say yes to a lot of things we don't like doing? Because we think it's the right thing to do sometimes, but maybe it's okay. It's okay to say no to people. Another possible scenario that might cause anxiety is you have to give someone bad news. So as Matt said, I work for Dignity Health, and I'm certain that there are many doctors who have to give bad news. I imagine that giving someone a bad diagnosis or bad news of any kind really can cause a lot of anxiety for this staff and these personnel, and then the person receiving it. You might be on the other end of that. You might have been in a situation where you were waiting to hear the news, and you were very anxious. You were hoping the news would be good, but maybe it turned out bad. And one of the hardest things I've had to do as a manager, supervisor, was lay off people. And absolutely one of the hardest things I had to do. And there were tears, and there was anger, and of course that caused anxiety for me. And of course that caused anxiety for them, knowing that they then had to find another job somewhere. So that's another reason we might feel anxiety in a relationship, is having to share bad news, or maybe waiting to see if we get bad news. Asking for help, another thing that causes us anxiety sometimes, right? Asking for help, we end up putting ourselves in a vulnerable spot. And frankly, not every relationship we come into is trustworthy. I used to work at a behavioral health hospital, and I would do groups for the patients. And this is one thing I would tell them is, this is something very personal to share. If you have mental illness and you're struggling with things, it could cause a lot of anxiety of who you tell. And I would tell them flat out, be careful who you tell, because you have to have that trust in a relationship. And yes, being vulnerable in a relationship is difficult. Admitting things to someone, sharing things with someone, may cause you to feel that anxiety of, can I trust them? Am I safe with them? So asking for help puts us in that vulnerable spot. But, to build relationships, we also have to do that. But we need to be safe in doing it. So finding those people we trust and feel safe with is very important when we do that. Giving feedback. So often in any kind of relationship, you might have some conflict, right? And some people don't take criticism well. I'll be honest, I'm one of those people. It's something that I tend to get defensive, but then I sit back and I think about it later, and I think, is there truth to that? But it's hard sometimes to give that feedback to someone. And so that, again, can cause some anxiety. And we have to think about when we receive criticism or feedback, what we do with that. And are we the one that's overly defensive? Do we need to make a more peaceful relationship about receiving feedback? That's a possibility. Ongoing issues in a relationship can cause anxiety. Now, there's some things that are ongoing that just won't be solved. You'll have a difference of opinion about something, you'll conflict on something, but maybe this relationship is worth putting up with that difference. My husband Matt and I, 2 different toothpastes. I like Colgate, he likes Crest. I don't think we're going to get past that, but I think I can live with that one. But that's just a silly example. But you have lots of different ideas of maybe things. Maybe you don't cross that line anymore with someone. Maybe it's in your family and you have very different opinions about controversial issues. And so you just don't cross that line anymore. You don't talk about that. I have people in my life that I feel that way about certain subjects. We just don't go there anymore. Friends, family. And that, to me, it's sad that we can't go there and be civil and kind to one another when we talk about these things. But sometimes it's a boundary that you don't want to cross, because ultimately it creates conflict and anxiety between the two of you. And that's okay, too. So those are all different ways. Does anyone, if I can hear you, does anyone have any other situations in relationships that cause anxiety for you? Going to the dentist? That one's a big anxiety causer, right? How good is your relationship with your dentist lately? But what's up? Pets? Yeah. Taking care of pets, maybe. Yeah. Or whether you agree with each other about pets. That's a possibility. So when is anxiety in a relationship normal? When is it normal? I think the disagreement about toothpaste is probably normal, right? That's probably normal. That's okay. When you have to walk on eggshells all the time with someone, maybe that's a time to examine if that relationship is healthy. When someone is extremely defensive about any feedback you give them, and you can never get past that, or it's a tit for tat, they're like, well, you know what you do this. Well, maybe it's time. I'm not saying it's you got to stay or got to go from that relationship. I'm saying maybe it's a question you ask yourself. Is this a reasonable thing? Abuse, of course, is never tolerated. If you are in an abusive situation, I know Ryan has said this many times, and I'm going to say it again. If you're in an abusive situation, you get out. Keep yourself safe. If you are continually anxious because you don't know how someone's going to react and it's going to be an abusive reaction, get out. If you can't be honest with someone because of their reaction, that's another reason to consider the relationship. And then a person that always crosses your boundaries. Let's say, this is a simple example, but you have a friend that you've told many times, don't come over without calling. I'd prefer that. And they just keep doing it. And they keep crossing your boundary. What does that say about them and their respect of you? So again, maybe that's something to consider in your relationships. And this starts really young. My daughter is in 4th grade, Phoebe, and she's already had situations with friends that have really crossed some boundaries. One of the key situations that I'm thinking of, she was told by this friend of hers, like, don't tell your parents. But I think this is, we have a toxic relationship. What 9-year-old uses the word toxic relationship? But anyway, all in all, something I think we can all learn from, and what we tell her is, be kind, be polite, but you don't have to be friends anymore. If it's a continual situation that you are uncomfortable in, that you're getting bullied in, then maybe it's time to move away, and that's okay. So, when we talk about being kind and polite, it doesn't mean we have to be a doormat. We have to love ourselves too, right? That's where it stems from. Love and respect of ourselves means that we can love and respect others. And so, once again, we hear the idea of forgive and forget, and we're going to talk about that a little bit more, but turn the other cheek, all those, love your enemies. But sometimes it's okay to love someone from afar and not be buddies. It's like at work, too, I tell my staff, you don't have to go to the movies on Friday night, but you do have to get along while you're here and do the work well together. So those are the ideas that I came up with for what might cause anxiety in a relationship. So we're going to go to a verse today that I want to focus on, and it's Romans 12:18. And the verse is, if possible, so far as it depends on you, live peaceably with all. It appears in Romans 12:18. It's part of a list of commands in Romans 12:9 through 21 that describes a lifestyle of serving and loving others. And the verse includes 2 conditions, if possible, and so far as it depends on you. This is because peaceful coexistence and complete reconciliation require cooperation from both parties. So it is not completely on you to live peaceably, right? And, as I picked this verse this week, and we'll come back to it a couple times as I talk, but I started to think about the times in my life where maybe I was the one who was poking. And so, they often say that when you get up and you preach or talk at church, you're really talking to yourself. And so some of this definitely is something I've had to examine in my life. But again, it's if possible, and so far as it depends on you. So again, if someone is crossing that line all the time, then you do what you can, but that part doesn't depend on you. So then you have to decide what the right answer is. All right, so going on from there. Oh, by the way, this piece of my sermon was from Google AI when I searched for this verse. And I thought, maybe I should just put in sermon about Romans 12:18 into Chat GPT. But I decided that would be cheating too much. So I did not use AI for my whole sermon. But so some other things that the verse suggests include. So being willing to admit when you're wrong, apologizing, making things right, forgiving, not being the reason for an unpeaceful relationship, not insisting on getting even, and discovering beauty in everyone. So those first 3, being willing to admit wrong, apologizing, and making things right. To me, those all go with the word integrity. So at Dignity Health, one of our core values is integrity. And I give a new employee orientation where I talk about the core values. And, the word that always first comes up is honesty for integrity. But I think integrity goes deeper than that. And it's about being able to say, you know what, I messed up, owning up to it, making it right if we can. And then, of course, if you did something to someone, that's when you say you're sorry, right? And it can be hard. Often I find that people who are insecure about making mistakes are the ones who try to cover it up the most. And the truth is, I just want everyone to know it's okay to make mistakes. I struggle a bit with perfectionism. I've gotten a lot better over my life, I think. But this is something that, we all need to tell ourselves it's okay to make a mistake. It's not the end of the world. We're human. We make mistakes. Now, if that mistake affects someone else, that's when we say, I'm sorry. So forgiving people. All right, so let's talk about forgiveness here for a minute. So forgiveness, like I said, we hear that kind of cliche, forgive and forget. Here's the thing about that. If you're truly hurt deep, the chances of you forgetting are slim to none. It just is. You're a human being. It's been imprinted on you, and you're not going to forget it. And sometimes that's okay, because you don't want certain things to repeat themselves. Just like we say, if you don't learn from history, it repeats itself. But forgiveness, we often think that means we are letting the other person off the hook, or we're saying that it's okay they did that. It's not. It's not always okay that they did that. And so we have to forgive people. A lot of it is for ourselves, to let ourselves heal from the hurt and the pain. And so it reminded me of a quote from Nelson Mandela, and his quote is, resentment is like drinking poison and then hoping it will kill your enemies. They may not even think they did anything wrong. They might have justified their action to you. And although sometimes it's a lot easier to forgive someone when they admit they did something wrong, but you're not always going to get that. It's just not going to happen. So then you have to ask yourself, what's healthy for you? Are you going to hold on to that resentment and anxiety and kind of let yourself be affected by that poison? Or are you going to let it go and let yourself heal? And it may take years and years, depending on how deep that pain is. Sometimes you give it up to God and then it comes back. And you have to give it up to God and it comes back, right? But it's a process. It's not like, at least in my experience, it's not one day I say, that's it, I forgive them, and I move on. For me, it's absolutely a process. So, not being the reason for an unpeaceful relationship. As I said, maybe you're the one who's going over those boundaries. Maybe you're the one poking in the areas that person has asked you not to poke in. So that's another thing for you to examine. Are you the reason for that anxiety, that stress between you and someone else? It's a good question to ask ourselves. Not insisting on getting even, right? There are sometimes you think, oh man, I can't wait till they get theirs, right? But is that where we're supposed to be coming from? No, it's not. Sometimes it happens all on its own and we feel vindicated. But trying to get even just continues a cycle of anger and conflict and hurt. We hear that phrase a lot, hurt people. And so we don't want to continue that cycle. We want to try to let it go and move forward. And then discovering beauty in everyone. So no matter what someone believes or thinks or has done, there is a spark of the divine in them. There is. I don't believe there's anyone on this earth that doesn't have a spark of the divine still in them. We're all broken. We're all broken in some way. The question is, how much of that spark is covered by other things? But can you see that in them? Can you get to that layer beneath where that spark still shines? And it reminded me of a Japanese art form. This statement specifically reminded me of a Japanese art form called kintsugi. And I don't know if I'm saying that right, but that's what it looks like. So this is, what they do in this form of art is they take broken pottery and they fill it with gold. They mend it with gold. So if you look at this bowl, you can see how the cracks have been put, there've been gold put in it to reinforce it. Now, personally, when I look at that, I think that's incredibly beautiful. And it reminds me of us as people that we have all these cracks, but if we can live and learn and grow, then this is what we might look like. Those cracks might turn into something beautiful in our lives and something that could bring beauty to others. And what I mean by that is, when you've experienced something hard and difficult, and maybe that gave you a crack, maybe someone else is experiencing that same exact crack, and you can help them heal as well. So if we can see the beauty in everyone, that helps us understand each other a little better and see that spark of the divine, and maybe make us a little less judgmental or critical of that person and what their reactions to things might be. So I wanted to share that. Going back to the verse again, I have 3 different versions of this verse because I just liked them. And again, we're at Romans 12:18. And so the first version is the Message, and it's just like, if you've got it in you, if you've got it in you, get along with everybody, which I think is interesting. It's like, if you can stand it to get along with people, whoever they might be, then please do that. I think it makes it very simple. Maybe, I'll be honest, maybe waters it down a little bit, like, I'm tired today, I don't want to get along with anyone. Well, maybe that's a little too simple of a get-out-of-jail-free card for not getting along with people. The New American Standard Bible, if possible, so far as it depends on you, be at peace with all men. Boo. So women, we only have to get along with the men in the audience, and men, you get along with other men, but forget the women. No, so this version is, a lot of times humanity or humankind is translated as men. So everyone is included. I don't particularly care for that translation, but it is there. And then Revised Standard Version. This is the one I think I like best, but I also like the Message, making it pretty simple. If possible, so far as it depends on you, live peaceably with all of us. Try to get along with everyone as best you can, right? But the question, too, then goes, if I'm trying to get along with everyone, what about the person that isn't trying to get along with me? And do we always need to get along? Do we? Probably not. I would say nope. So there are those relationships in our lives where, or those times in our lives where maybe it's okay to fight back a little bit. Maybe something is unjust or unethical that you're being asked to do. Or maybe it's crossing those boundaries. And so I would say in those situations, again, you can try to be polite and kind and move along, but sometimes that's not possible. And so maybe it's okay in those situations to not get along all the time. And I think that's okay. Now, I have a video of one of what I think is one of the most godly people I've ever seen on television. And it's a video, though, of when he just cannot possibly get along with this other person. So even the most godly people in our lives are not immune to losing their temper or getting upset or not getting along. So if we can go to that video.
5F03!
Flanders!
What?
Flanders!
What? What is it?
Game's out there! Made you look.
They're just words, Nettie. Words can't hurt you. Ow! That's it!
Dad, that was really mean.
I know, sweetie, and I got him right in the... Uh-oh. Hi, Flanders. Go Wildcat.
Do you have a problem with the way I'm coaching?
No. It's just that, well, like I was yelling earlier, it seems like anyone with half a brain could coach better than you.
Half a brain, huh? Well, you know what? It sounds like you just volunteered.
Me? But you were doing such a great job.
So, if you don't know The Simpsons, Ned Flanders is like the ultra Christian man who lives next to Homer, and clearly it is Homer that is causing this unpeaceful relationship. And so there's a couple of times that Ned just loses it with him. And so, as you can see, probably, the unpeaceful side, as I said, was Homer. But so that's just kind of a silly little clip saying that even when we're trying the hardest we can and trying to be as godly as we can, that we're not going to be perfect, we're going to be human, and that other person pushing our buttons might just get to us sometimes. So there's one relationship we haven't talked about yet, and that is our relationship with God, right? So going from the silly to a little more serious is, what causes anxiety in your relationship with God? As I said a little earlier, I was in my 20s when I became a Christian, and when I was kind of on that cusp of becoming a Christian, I went to church with one of my friends, and she asked me, she said, what's holding you back? And, it's like, and she said something about, I can't remember exactly, but something about what is it that's stopping you? What is it with God? That kind of thing. And she's like, it's okay to do it, to come to God. And I said, well, my anxiety lies not in God Himself, but in me. Like, what if God asks me to do something I don't think I can do? That was my anxiety. Is like, I felt like there was this standard. Like I said, I've dealt with perfection throughout my life. I felt like if I didn't do everything exactly the way God wanted, I was going to be in trouble. And so I would rather just not be in a relationship with God, because then maybe He wouldn't ask me to do things, So what is it about your relationship with God that might cause anxiety? Do you come from a background that sees God as wrathful, maybe punishing, maybe legalistic? Maybe you come from a background that's very legalistic, and if you don't do this, and this, God's angry with you. If that's the case and that causes anxiety for you, I would say examine the other side of God. Examine the love and grace and the pursuing of us. There was that song we just heard, follow us, He will follow us. Getting deeper into that verse, it actually really is this active pursuing of you that God is doing. Not just following passively behind you. God is pursuing you, and He loves you. And, there are things in our lives that maybe we feel convicted about and need to change. But you know what? God loves you through that. Every single step of the way. God is loving us, moving us to be who He wants us to be. So this idea, and I've met many people who have this idea that God is wrathful and punishing, and the bad things in their life are God's punishment. If there's that kind of anxiety in a relationship with God, I would just say, examine the other side. Examine the love that God has for you, because it's there. It's more love than you could ever experience on this earth. Think about the person that you feel loves you the most here on this earth, and then multiply that by 1,000,000. I mean, God's love is perfect. None of us can love perfectly, but God can. So if that doesn't take you away from that idea of having an anxious relationship with God, I don't know what will. Just ask yourself, can you get there? Can you believe that? So I'm going to end with the verse in the Message, which is, if you've got it in you, get along with everybody. Thank you guys so much for listening to me, giving me the chance to talk. Thank you so much. I'm going to close this in a prayer. So if you want to stand at this time, I'll say a closing prayer. Dear God, I lift every single person up in this room. I pray that whatever is weighing heavy on their hearts in relationships, maybe other things are going on in their lives that are causing anxiety or hurt or pain, I pray, God, that you would help bring them peace. God, lead us as we step out these doors into the world to show your love as best as we can, Lord, that we would show your love to others, that we would not be the reason for an unpeaceful relationship. God, I also pray a prayer of celebration for any joys that might be on our heads and hearts today, anything great coming up, any birthdays and anniversaries and just wonderful things that you've given us. God, I thank you for bringing this congregation together. I pray that your Holy Spirit fall upon each person, give them a sense of peace and love, surround them with blessings. God, I pray for our United States, where anxiety is quite prevalent right now. We pray for the upcoming elections and the anxiety those might be causing. God, I thank you for all the blessings we have and those yet to come. Amen.